value structure. I thought this was supposed to be a family values country. I'm for Hillary because I think she'll fix this. Now, you've got to decide whether you agree with this and you understand this. But I think I'll convince you that you can save money by covering it. Let me just give you two quick examples. Number one, every time you make a payment for health care, you are contributing to $50 billion the insurance companies spend every year trying to not insure you. Think of it as your uninsurance premium. I'm sorry you've got a pre-existing condition. I'm sorry you've got a health insurance policy that just doesn't cover what you need now, even though you thought it did when you bought it. I'm sorry you do have a policy, it covers what you need. What you need is really expensive. So I just went back and reviewed your application. You left line 3 blank. I'm canceling you. You spent $50 million on this a year. If everybody was covered, that money would go away like that. It would be illegal for anybody to spend $1 trying to get your medical records not to insure you. Second, McKinsey & Company in New York did a study last year saying that we spend $200 billion on paperwork we would not spend in any other country. 30 cents of every hard-earned dollar you pay for health care goes to paperwork. Ask any doctor, their paperwork costs you triple. And if you made any claims, you've been there. First you file a claim, then they say you're not covered. You know you're covered, and they know you're covered. Everybody's got to explain all these emails and letters, and you got to go hunt up forms and everything. And the whole purpose of it is so the insurance company can wait 4 months to pay, earn interest on your premiums, then they fork over the money. Meanwhile, you've added a fortune to the system. If we were all covered in big pools, we could move closer to Medicare's paperwork costs. You know what it is? Not 30 cents on the dollar, 3 cents on the dollar. Why? There is no incentive not to pay. Now, here's Hillary's alternative. If you like what you've got, you can keep it. But if you don't like it, if you don't have it, or if you can't afford it anymore, you can buy into the exact same plan that insures federal employees and members of Congress and our families. You underwrite it anyway, it's a great plan. You ought to have access to it. It'll be cheaper than 90+% of the people are getting today. How will that save money? First, you save the $50 billion right off the bat. Second, because there'll be millions and millions of us, probably over 100 million when we get done. And these big funds, it'll look more like Medicare. And there'll be no incentive for anybody to delay payment unless there's a real question. So the cost will go way down. Then you take the savings and you give it to low-income working people, to small businesses, and to family farming operations that are trying to help their employees so that nobody pays more than a certain fixed percentage of their income in tax and health care. Nobody finds it unaffordable, but we all have to be covered. Unless we're all covered, we're not going to get control of the cost. You have to decide whether you believe this and how important it is to you. But if you believe it, if it's important, if you're tired of making excuses and you want to make progress, Hillary is your only choice for president because she's got the plan that does that for everybody. Every single solitary soul in this country. The next reason you ought to be for is that she got the most aggressive plan to deal with this home mortgage crisis. And this is really important. If you do not know a soul that's had their mortgage foreclosed on, you should really care about this. 1 million people lost their homes last year. More than 1 million are slated to lose them this year. Every time, if somebody in South Florida loses their home, it hurts you. Why? Because it costs the economy between $220,000 and $320,000 every time a family loses their home. Hillary's plan is simple. She says, look, if these people are honest and they've been making their mortgage payments, don't increase their mortgage payments at the very time the housing values are going down, ensuring you'll have a foreclosure and we'll lose a lot of money. She wants to provide the funds and have the federal government rewrite the mortgages to leave everybody in their house for the next 5 years at the present mortgage rate. Will it cost you some money? Yes. Approximately $30 billion. Do you have to pay it? No. We cannot do anything. Let 1 million people be thrown into the streets with their families, and then 2 years from now, whoever's the president will come back and say, I'm sorry, I need $300 or $400 billion to clean up a mess we could have stopped in the first place. That's what you hire a president to do, to make those tough decisions, get ahead of the problems, stop bad things from happening so you can make better things happen. Next reason you ought to be for it is that she's got the best education and research program, and if you want to keep growing the economy, we've got to keep doing that. And let me just say, you don't have to take my word for this. When I was governor of Arkansas, Hillary was in charge of our school reform program. When we started, the national experts said we had the worst schools in America. When I came here running for president, the same guy said we had one of the 2 most improved systems in America. She's worked hard on this stuff. She believes we need a universal pre-kindergarten program to get all our kids off to an even start. She believes that No Child Left Behind doesn't work, won't work, can't be made to work. Of our schools where there are kids who literally get out of middle school not being able to read. But it's supposed to address the real challenge in American education, which is that by the 8th grade and the 11th grade, there's a gap in science, math, technology, and foreign languages, and what our young people know and what kids in foreign countries know. Now, you want everybody in South Dakota to learn at world-class standards, don't you? And I hope you know they can. And this is not a political statement. I want you to clarify that this is a scientific fact. There are big, big comprehensive brain studies now which show beyond any doubt that virtually 100% of our children, without regard to their race, their income, or their first language, can learn 100% of what they need to know to do well in this interdependent world. The reason we're behind Singapore, let's say, is that all these other countries go to school longer every year. They start the hard courses earlier. They have national standards they've worked on for decades. And relative to the other professions in the country, they pay the teachers more, they train them harder, and they retrain them for a lifetime. Always, always, always standing in the curve. So, then South Dakota gets this law dumped on you that says we're going to solve this problem by having you give your kids 5 tests 5 years in a row, and we're going to give you federal money based on how they do on the test. If you want to do this with a test, you pick a really hard test with a really high score. And you'd say, who cares if it takes us 10 years, we'll be gaining on it. And if you did it, you'd lose your federal money and the school budget would collapse. So you give them some other test. The kids hate it, the teachers hate it, the parents hate it, the principals hate it. You spend all your time teaching the test. 80% of our schools have already cut back on music, on the arts, on history, on economics, already to give this unfunded mandate. And because the test is not going to achieve its objective, over time, your kids are going to learn less than they would if you never had it at all. This thing needs to be radically changed. The money should be spent to help recruit truly qualified teachers in these areas. The money should be spent to help the schools in their special education program. The money should be spent to identify schools in America that today, with representative student bodies, are already performing at world-class standards. Figure out what they're doing right, and spend a little money to help every school in America do the same thing. That's what the military would do. That's what a successful franchise would do. That's what you do. It'll work much better than No Child Left Behind. It's a good reason to vote for it for president. Third thing I want to say is she wants every young person to be able to go to college and stay there. And I'll be very specific about this. Number one, she wants to raise the college tuition tax credit from $1,650 to $3,500 a year. Number two, she wants to raise the Pell Grants every year to keep up with inflation. Number three, she wants to crack down on the abuses of these private student loan companies that are ripping kids off to infinity loans like 14, 16, 18%. And let the federal government loan them the money direct if they can't get the interest rates down. We did that when I was president, and we had 10 million more people borrowing money, and you, the taxpayers, saved money because once the students could afford to pay the loans back, they did. You know, when Hillary and I were young, we were poor as church mice. And the time we got to law school, we'd been on our own for several years, and we were up to our ears in debt. But our country loaned us money at 3% interest. You know what that says to a kid like me? First person in your family to go to college, raised by a stepfather, didn't have a high school diploma, living in the second poorest state in the country. And have your government say, I believe in you. We need you. We need a president who will say that to young Americans again, and she will prove it. Let me say this. It's another one of those deals where you don't have to take her